Welcome to episode 3 of season 8 of the Gospel Overgimmicks podcast. Today I'm going to look at tithing versus New Testament giving. Are Christians required to give 10% of their income to the local church? Let's get after it. Thank you for joining me for the Gospel Overgimmicks podcast. I'm your host, Richard Stormin Norman, here to tell you everything I know, some things I highly suspect. Today we're going to discuss, this might give away my position a little bit, but we're going to discuss how strange it is that some pastors and preachers try to shove an Old Testament teaching like tithing into a New Testament church age. It's weird. If you're going to preach that we are no longer under the law, should that not mean all of it? All the law? And don't worry, we're going to talk about Abram and Melchizedek too, because that's their favorite thing to go to. But yeah, we'll get into all that. I could have been slick and try to make you wonder, well, what side is he on? But, I don't believe tithing is for the New Testament church. It's an Old Testament thing. But I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Before we get into that, though, how are you doing this rainy Monday here in Florida? It figures. It was raining at work, whatever. I work outside, so I expect it to rain. It's no big deal. But I left work, and I'm driving home. I don't know. I don't understand why it's like 30 minutes for me to get to work, and like 40 for me to get home. And so I'm on my way home, and I'm coming down my street, and oh man, I need to go to the store. Now, it ain't really hardly rained at all since I left work. A little bit of a sprinkle on the windshield, nothing major. I get to the store, which is like down the street here, like a quarter of a mile, and go in the store, and as soon as I get in the store, to the bottom just falls out, and it's pouring rain. I'm like, that figures. I get out. Don't bring my umbrella. It's pouring rain. Luckily, it let up before I got out of the store. But there's your random story for today. Weather's raining. It's hot. It's raining. My COVID cough is just about gone. I can go whole days now without even realizing if I coughed or not. So we're going to give the joyful noise a shot today at the end of the show. See how that works out. Spoiler alert, though, I already recorded it, and it worked out pretty good. Bibles I've been using this week. I used this one to do my Sunday school lesson. Not teach it, but do the notes for my Sunday school lesson and the notes for this podcast, because this Bible's just, if you could see my desk, it ain't super big. Like, it's long, but it ain't super this way. And this Bible just don't take up a lot of room on my desk, the Allen Bevere Blackface. So I tend to grab it a lot just because I know I can flop it open on the desk here and it doesn't take up a lot of room. That's always a good thing. I got my Canterbury out, but I ended up not bringing it to church. Instead, I brought the turquoise to church. And that's about it. That's about all I've been using this week, I reckon. Listener topics, if you got one, shoot it down there in the comment section, and maybe I'll add it to the list, or you can send it to me in an email if you want to, and maybe I'll put it on the list. You never know. I bought a new desk chair. I don't know if I told y'all that, but there's one piece of it that's super cheap, and it's already falling apart. Luckily, it don't have anything to do with like structural integrity or anything. So if you got listener topics, put them in the comments. Send me an email if you want to. And before we begin today, I got a question for you. Sometimes I ask these questions for y'all to ponder in your heads. And I was driving down the road on my way home from work last week, and I was thinking about, how Catholics teach about praying to Mary. And I've heard I bought the dogs a new bone. Y'all need to chill out. And I've heard, Catholics say, well, why wouldn't you pray to Mary? Who is he, going to listen to more, you or his mother? Which is a stupid explanation. You ain't got to tell me. That's downright dumb. But that got me thinking. Does Jesus, now that, he's in heaven, and I'm Mary, as far as I know, I got no reason not to believe, Mary's in heaven too, does he still acknowledge her as his mother? So that's the question I got for y'all. Do you think Jesus still acknowledges Mary as his mother in heaven? Because it's really not necessary, I wouldn't think. But maybe, I don't know. Y'all tell me. I'm kind of up in the air about it. Thought I'd throw it out there to you, see what y'all thought. Anyway, let's get into the main topic, tithing or cheerful giving. We got 3 pages of notes today. Let's see if we can get this recorded before my wife gets home from work. I'm going to use the Canterbury, since I just busted it out of the box the other day. So here's the subject today that is sure to stir the pot. Are New Testament Christians obligated to give 10% of their income to a local church? Are they obligated? Is the Old Testament law of tithing applicable to the church? Just saying it out loud like that sounds ridiculous to think such a thing. But that's what most churches teach. Have taught for a long time. I grew up in a church that was dispensational, at least as far as I can tell it was, yet we never really got taught dispensationalism, unless I just wasn't paying attention, and we did, but I don't recall any time where I heard the word dispensational or it had any kind of a dispensational lesson taught to me at the church I grew up in. But about 6 years ago, when I really started looking deeper into dispensationalism, that's when I really started to learn some of the standard IFB type teachings that they teach. They just didn't make sense, all of them. One of them was the teaching on tithing. It just never much made sense that what we refer to as the New Testament church would teach something from Old Testament as doctrine. It don't make sense. Even when I was a kid, I don't think it really made sense to me. Not a kid, but a young adult. And I'm like, why does the preacher always go to the Old Testament, book of Malachi, to teach on tithing? I don't understand that. It's like, is there nowhere else that talks about it? But we'll get to that in a minute. But the reason a preacher can't preach a sermon on tithing from the New Testament, because it ain't there. It ain't there. Paul, from whom we get our church doctrine, he doesn't teach tithing. He doesn't. It's weird. Weird that he wouldn't say something about it, yet we always preach on it. It's weird. But I know what people say, tithing was done by Abram, or tithing was done by Abram before the law even happened. So, let's answer this objection real quick. Go to Genesis 14. We're looking at verses 18 through 20. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And he gave him tithes of all. So you probably know the story. Abram went to battle against these kings because they kidnapped Lot and whatever, and he had to go get Lot back. He defeated them, and he's returning home with all these spoils that he took from these kings that he just put a whooping on. So most people will look at this verse and say, see, Abram paid a tithe to Melchizedek long before there was a law. Like 400 or 500 years before there was a law, Abram was paying tithes to Melchizedek. There's some problems with that understanding. If we're saying a tithe is 10% of your income, then Abram messed up big time here. Because he's not tithing on his income. He's tithing on the spoils he got from battle, not his income. Abram was pretty wealthy, and yet, other than this place right here, this one time that's ever mentioned is the time he paid a tithe. Never does it ever mention him paying tithes to anybody else. And you know he's a wealthy man, but why is he not paying tithes on that income he's got? It's just this one time he pays tithes. One time. And it's not even of his income. It's just of some spoils he got from battle, which he wouldn't have got if he hadn't gone to battle. So we are to tithe. We're supposed to believe this. We are to tithe because Abram did it before the law existed. That's a weak argument. What about some of the other things did? What about some of the other things Abram did before the law existed? Are we supposed to do those too? What about Abram's polygamy? He had more than one wife. Are we to sacrifice animals? Abram sacrificed animals. Are we supposed to do that? No, no. But it was before it happened before the law existed. Like we know the law mandated it. But he was doing it before the law existed, like tithing. So shouldn't we do animal sacrifice too? Is it okay that he lied to Pharaoh? Said his wife was his sister? No preacher would teach that. You know? No preacher would teach such a thing. What about tithing under the law? Well, let's talk about tithing under the law. I think most of us would admit the New Testament church not under the law. So it don't matter what they did under the law. You know? We can agree on that. I'll agree with you on that one. New Testament church is not under the law. But what was tithing under the law? Was it giving money to support the priest? To support the temple and whatnot? No, it wasn't. Not if you really look it up. It was food. It was your crops and your animals. Stuff you could eat. Let's go to Deuteronomy 12:5. But unto the place which the Lord your God shall choose out of all your tribes to put his name there, even unto his habitation shall ye seek, and thither shalt thou come. That is where you go to pay your tithes. The Israelites went to pay their tithes in Jerusalem. So the tithe must be taken to Jerusalem. We don't do that. The local church down the street, it's not Jerusalem. Verse 6, and thither ye shall bring your burnt offerings and your sacrifices and your tithes and heave offerings and of your hand and your vows and your freewill offerings and the firstlings of your herds and of your flocks. And there ye shall eat before the Lord your God, and ye shall rejoice in all that ye put your hand unto ye and your households wherein the Lord thy God hath blessed thee. Notice he's talking about food, a whole bunch of food type things. Because the priests had to eat. The Levites, they had to eat. There's no mention of money in verse 6. Verse 7, verse 17, verse 18, and verse 21 all talk about eating. This is stuff that the Levites could eat that you were bringing to give. So we have this idea, well, they did in the Old Testament, they brought money to the priests so the priests could survive because they didn't have jobs and whatnot. That's not what it says at all. It says they brought food for the priests to eat, for the Levites to eat. Now there's passages in the Bible where they took up money to maintain the temple maintenance and tabernacle maintenance at one time, but that wasn't a tithe. That was just an offering or a tax. So let's look at the famous one, Malachi 3, 8 through 10, the most famous passage of scripture to be used to be preached about tithing. Verse 8, will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be enough room to receive it. Like I said, most famous passage you've probably heard used to preach on tithing. But how can a rightly dividing Bible believer read this and think it applies to the church? Or even stretch it, twist it, rip it out of context, and make it apply to the church? So who is it talking about here? It's talking about the Jews. It says it right there. It says, ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. What nation? The nation of Israel. Not Brother John, the plumber. Not Sister, Carolyn down there. We have like 5 Carolyns at my church, so that's a common name. Not them. They're talking about the nation of Israel at this time in the book of Malachi. But yet always it's going to be you. You ain't paying your tithes, you're robbing God. It's not what the context says. Also, verse 9 says there, ye are cursed with a curse. Dang, that's serious. That is serious stuff. I'm sure you've all heard a preacher tell you, well, if you don't pay your tithes, God's going to get it out of that car repair shop when your car blows up. God's going to get it out of the hospital when your kid gets sick or you get cancer or whatever. If you don't pay your tithes, God's going to get his money. I've heard preachers get up and say that. God's going to get his money. Cursed with a curse. Why would God curse you for breaking a law that you're not obligated to fulfill? The Bible clearly says New Testament church is not under the law. Paul says that. You're not under the law, you're under grace. So why would God punish you for breaking the law that no longer applies to you? It don't make any sense. Go to Galatians 3:13. We've covered this one already in the study we did. I think last one we did was Galatians 3, I think. Anyhow, Galatians 3:13. Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, for it is written, curses at every one that hangeth on a tree. Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law. Hallelujah. That's what I'm talking about. We don't have to worry about if we break the law, any point of the law, God's going to curse. If you're saved, Christ has redeemed you from the curse. Imagine that. At this point, I know if you stuck around this long, you're probably yelling at your whatever it is, however it is you're consuming the podcast today. You're probably screaming at like, oh, so you don't believe Christians ought to give to their church? Not saying that at all. I'm just saying we should give the way the New Testament church is supposed to give. Let's go to see what Apostle Paul says about it. 2 Corinthians 9. I'm just saying, if you're going to be a Bible-believing, dispensationalist, rightly dividing the word of truth, then you understand that our doctrine comes from the Apostle Paul. He was the apostle to the Gentiles. 2 Corinthians 9, 6, and 7. But this I say, he which soweth sparingly shall reap also sparingly, and he which soweth bountifully shall reap also bountifully. Every man according as he purposeth in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. Verse 6 there is telling us that if you give a little, you'll be blessed. If you give a lot, you'll be blessed even more. Give a little, be blessed a little. Give a lot, be blessed a lot. Verse 7 is the key here. Let's break it down and we'll finish up. Look at there where it says, purposeth in his heart. Verse 7, every man according as he purposeth in his heart. Every man decides for himself what he'll give. There's no minimum. The law was a minimum, 10%. So that was under the law. Tithe, the word tithe means 10%. So there's a minimum. You better not give below this minimum. You can give more, you better not give less. Paul says, every man purposeth in his heart. Whatever you decide is right for you to give is what you give. It might be 9%. Ooh. Oh no. Now look there, not grudgingly. It says there in verse 7. Maybe giving 10% means that you have to live off ramen noodles, and that doesn't make you very happy. Doesn't make you very cheerful. God doesn't want money that you don't want to give. He doesn't want money unless you are giving it not grudgingly. Cheerful. It makes me happy to put this money in there. Not, oh, I don't know what we're going to do, but we got to give 10%. That kind of attitude. Also look there, probably the most important part of that verse. Verse 7. Not grudgingly or of necessity. If the idea is, and this is what the preachers preach, I'm sure you've heard. If the idea is, if you do not pay your tithe, God will take it somewhere else. He'll blow up your car. He'll break your kid's leg. You'll have to pay it in medical bills or repair shop or your hot water heater go out. If you don't pay your tithes, God's gonna get his money. If that's the teaching we're to believe, that makes it a necessity. Well, I better pay this money to God. It's like extortion. Paying God extortion money. I got to pay God this money or he's going to break my kid's leg. He's going to blow up my hot water heater. That makes it of necessity, and Paul just said not of necessity. So the bottom line here is every Christian should give to who's feeding them the word, which should be your local church. I understand there are places in the world where finding a local Bible-believing church with sound doctrine is next to impossible. In that case, give your money to whoever it is. You got to get it from somewhere. Get your preaching from somewhere. Give it to them. Don't have to be 10%, 2%, 5%, 15%, 20%. Whatever it is that makes you cheerful. Whatever it is that you purpose in your heart. But you're under no obligation, no command, no law to do so. If you give nothing, if you don't drop nothing in the offering plate, God's not going to strike you down. He's not going to blow up your car. He's not going to break your kid's leg. Ain't going to do none of that. If you give 10% because that's what you want to give, not because you're under obligation. I'm going to give 10%. That's good. That's good. You'll get blessed for that. You want to give 20%? Even better. You'll get blessed more for that. That's the point Paul's making there in verse 6. You sow sparingly. You throw $1 in the offering plate. You'll get blessed $1's worth. You throw, $300. You'll get blessed $300 worth. Now I understand why pastors preach on tithing. I'm not ignorant to the fact. A church can't operate without money. You can sit there and pretend like it can all you want. You can go to third world country. They're having church. They ain't got a lot of money, but they got some. So they feel like they need, in order to keep the lights on, and in order to keep the church's ministries operating, because that stuff ain't cheap. My church, every month we have a business meeting, and my sister, she's like this church secretary. And she prints out these little sheets, and it has all the stuff the church spent the money on that month, the last month. And stuff we do, bringing in a preacher, we pay for his hotel and stuff like that, that's on there. If we do some kind of event like we have at the end of the school year, we'll have an event for the youth where they'll have like an ice cream night to celebrate ending another school year. That costs money. When we have our fall festival, trying to get people to come to the fall festival and see the church and meet the people of the church, and then hoping they come back for Pack-A-Pew the next day, That costs money. Ministry costs money. It just does. And I understand why preachers feel the need to instill fear into people that they need to put this money. It solidifies their income. They got to have that. Now, granted, some preachers, they might be doing it because they want to make sure their salary comes in. I don't know. Probably some of them. But most of them, they understand. And I don't fault them. Church needs money to run. And preaching on tithing will make people steadily put that check in the offering plate every week or every 2 weeks or whatever. But they need to preach the Bible. It's much more important to preach the Bible, rightly divided, and have faith that their flock that they're in watching over will do the right thing. Well, I can't preach New Testament giving. What if they don't want to give anything? They won't feel obligated to give. You got to have faith in your people, man. If you're preaching the Bible, you're feeding them. They're going to do the right thing. Some of them ain't, but most of them are. But trying to scare people into paying God extortion money so you don't blow up their car, that's just baloney, man. That's just baloney. We are under grace, not under the law. That's all I got to say about that. Like it or lump it, as Andrew Sluter would say. That's all I got for you today. For all the information you need regarding the podcast, including social media links, how to support us financially, how to be saved, and information on me, your host, check out the website at gospelovergimmicks.org. The store, still haven't really messed with it. Didn't really have time this past week. But I got all this stuff added to the store. Just got to figure out how to show y'all how to get there. If you like what you saw today, subscribe, like, share, rate, review, follow. Yes, Stella has to join us to close out the podcast because I imagine she wants to go outside. Anyway, if you like what you saw today, subscribe, like, share, rate, review, follow. Before I go, let me ask, are you saved? In order to be saved, you must put your faith in... Okay, Stella, I got to give the gospel presentation here. Hold on just a second. In order to be saved, you must put your faith in the gospel of the grace of God. Don't know what that is? Let me read you this from 1 Corinthians 15, 1-4. Moreover, brethren, I declare unto you the gospel which I preached unto you, which also ye have received, and wherein ye stand, by which also ye are saved, if you keep in memory what I preached unto you, unless ye have believed in vain. For I delivered unto you first of all that which I also received, how that Christ died for our sins, the death, according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, the burial, and that he rose again the third day according to the Scriptures. Believing in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ is how you get saved. Alright, so I pray you get saved today. It'll be the best decision you've ever made. You'll never regret it. And I'll meet you in heaven. If you get saved, I'll see you there. Otherwise, I ain't gonna. Anyway, that's gonna do it for today. Appreciate y'all sticking around, tuning in. Especially all y'all who got mad because you believe in tithing. Appreciate y'all. We can disagree. If you believe in tithing, I got no problem with you. I just don't believe that tithing is for the New Testament church. I think the Bible is clear. Alright. Till next time. Take up your cross. Carry on. Alright. Didn't get to do it last 2 episodes. Gonna give it a shot today. I'm still not 100%, but I think I'm good enough where I can pull this off. And since we ain't done it in a hot minute, it's been since June since we last did it, I'm gonna sing one of my favorites. I've sung it on here twice before, but I like it, so I'm gonna sing it. I'm gonna sing the first verse and chorus of Heaven's Bright Shore. out on the hills of glory land, so happy and free at God's right hand. They tell of a place of marvelous grace on heaven's bright shore. Pilgrims on earth someday will go to live in that home forevermore, trusting in Him who died for sin and rose from the grave. On heaven's bright shore, there's gonna be no more dying, not one little grave in all that fair land, that wonderful land. Not even a tear will dim the eye, and no one up there will say goodbye. Just singing His praise through endless days on heaven's bright shore. Made it through.